What's happening, people? Welcome back to another episode of the Swingman podcast and another live one that we're doing. I believe it's podcast number 122. As ever, I'm your host, Jordan Ledger, joined as I am all the time by Louis Halpin and Lewis Howard. Now, boys, before we get into some NBA shenanigans, the classic "How are we?" is going to get festered out. So, how have you been? How was your weekends? How's it been since we last podded?
Yeah, not bad. There was a lot of playoff basketball in between when we last recorded and some monumental performances that we'll get into, so I'm ready to get stuck in.
Yeah, I've been away for the last, not the whole week, but a bit of the week, so a little bit challenging keeping up with some of these. There's not a big NBA fan base in this. Well, maybe I just couldn't source them out correct if there's some sort of like dark dungeon where they're all hiding, but I couldn't see them. So yeah, it's a bit tricky keeping up with some of these, but obviously the big hitters on the weekend and some of the well, I mean, we'll get into it a little bit more, but it's certainly been quite interesting and not gone the way I assumed with at least one of these series anyway. Maybe a couple.
Wouldn't be. Bourbon, how are you doing? How you doing? I hope you are well. Let's get into some NBA action. So we was just discussing before. When did we last? Where was we up to? Did we run through these games prior?
Yeah.
Did we have this that Phoenix were through?
Yeah, I think the first round was pretty much done.
I think it was done by the time that we last spoke. Yeah. I think we're looking at the 1st of May would be the last time we spoke.
Oh yeah, I was really far back. And yeah, I've got really far back here for this one. So I mean, we got couples to do. We got some semi-finals that we need to just run through, and I'd say that it hasn't really gone par for course, has it, Lewis? In terms of some of our predictions of what we expected to see. Not from some of them we've got right and vaguely right, but there has been some upsets that have been thrown.
Yeah, well, a couple of the issues are that some of the teams we picked through to go through in the first round are just not there anymore.
Yeah, obviously.
We've spoken about that already. The Bucks being one of them, and then I think we'll probably pick the Cavs to go through. I can't remember now, but I know I said it'd be difficult. But I think the Cavs will probably our pick, and neither of them are in that semi-final. So it's hard to prospect from the start, obviously, because these things happen. But even with the matchups we've got now, I think there's a couple that we'll get into that you wouldn't have expected to turn out the way they are at the moment. Obviously, still all to play for in all of the games, but some people are in more dire straits than others.
Yeah, I mean, so let's start with Heat Knicks is the one that I think I'd say. And I'm not sure that there is really too much to play for here. It does seem to me that this has been a gentleman's sweep here from Miami. I just feel like all hope is almost lost with the Knicks. They seem to have completely, not the actual players themselves, but even the fan base with it seems to have completely given up now. It seems that Julius Randle is going to have a lot to do to come back from this with some Knicks fans, is what it seems.
Yeah, he had an all right game last game, actually. He was pretty efficient. I think he was 20-9. But the game before was just tragic. I can't remember what it was now. It was like 4 or 15 or something. And with the Heat playing how they are, Jimmy Butler playing how he is, I think he's probably been a top 3 player in the playoffs, I'd say. Maybe 3 or 4. Definitely top 5 at least. You can't have one of your best players, it was argued before, who would be putting all NBA out of Brunson and Randall because you wanted some mixed representation. Well, Brunson's been holding up his end of the bargain in a lot of the games, but Randall really needs to pick it up, although he did have an all right game last game. I think last game, I know we'll probably jump into game by game, but just to jump ahead to the latest one. The game was really the game with how he's been doing in the playoffs. I hope you heard as much of that. I just said Bam played well, basically, in the last game. And just turnovers and offensive rebounds, just swinging the way of the Heat, I think was what helped push them over the line. Just that gritty stuff that I can't think of how many times I've said the word gritty with these two teams over this playoffs, but that's just how they play. And when you see those things swing somewhat heavily towards one team, then you can probably guess who the result it went for.
Yeah, I think that is good you mentioned that offensive rebound point. Is something I was going to mention. It's probably something that probably drove Tibbs slightly off the wall. If you know Tibbs and how he operates, that's probably one of his fundamental principles. I think you could probably miss 1,000 shots with Tibbs, he wouldn't care. But if you're not trying on defense, if you're not playing with the full sort of 100% type thing, he's not going to have it. But I do think the Julius Randle point is quite important. And I know, like you said, he had a pretty decent game. But I think it's pretty clear to see at this stage that he's not your best player on your team, and maybe that's even on the championship team. That number of players who I'd feel confident in saying that about is quite limited. So, like someone like Jalen Brunson, who I really like as well, I wouldn't put him along that caliber, but I think he's someone that can be actively built around, and you put another good guy with him, say Luka Doncic, for example, or someone like that. And he can kind of get you across the line because he can generate offense in like the most tightest of situations, which is what we've seen really last year when he was with the Mavericks in those couple of games where Luka wasn't playing. And this year, I agree, he's held up his end of the bargain, even if defensively struggling a little bit. But yeah, Julius Randle, I think we've had two pretty big examples here now. This is more post mortem. We're kind of agreeing here, or sort of like holding a pretty premature funeral for the New York Knicks' playoff dreams here. But I feel like he's just not. He can't be trusted as your number one guy, basically. And if he can't be, you'd expect at least one of these other guys who, I think they're all decent players, but no one's really stepped up alongside Jalen Brunson. If I'm quite honest, you got a bit of RJ Barrett in there. He can hit a couple shots every now and then, but it's inconsistent. Josh Hart has been so muted in comparison to the Cavs series, where it looked like he was just some phenom that had just drafted him from anywhere. So I just think they're in a good position. I think they're in a better position now than they were a couple of years ago when they got bounced by the Hawks, because I think they've got like an attractive prospect here in New York, whereas before you could see it's a bit of a flash in the pan. But Jalen Brunson's good enough to build around, I think, and I think players will be maybe looking at the New York Knicks as a more of a entertaining prospect rather than it has been in previous years. But I mean, we're sort of ragging on the Knicks here, but you got to give Miami a lot of credit, especially without their second highest scorer, Tyler Hero, has been injured since game 2, game 3 of the
game two.
Yeah, and I mean I think that was a 4 to 6 week injury when he got it. He could be on the comeback soon in this team. Maybe that kind of messes up the whole offense. I don't think so, because they're bloody scraping hard to get any sort of offense from all of these players. But Jimmy Butler has just been, I think he's got to be top 3 players. He'd be top 3 with Book and Jokic for me.
Yeah, I mean, the way in which I don't really know how to see this series is necessarily if it's that the Heat have been better or the Knicks have just been bad. I think it is a mix of both, really. RJ Barrett has, I would say, had a better series than Julius Randle. And if that is the case, then it's never going to look really too great for the Knicks. RJ Barrett should never be the second best player on your team in this series for the players that they've got. And it's also just weird to see sort of the reduced minutes that, like Quentin Grimes was getting 42 minutes in this one, more of just the reduced responsibilities that they got. I know Quickly had the injury and everything like that, but it's not really been
good anyway.
Yeah, he's not been good anyway. It hasn't been the series that I was necessarily expecting, is what I'd say. But I think you have to give the props to Miami because they've upset everyone that they've come across at the moment right now. No one expected them to be in this position in the first place. But to round this one off, then I'll quickly run us back to the bracket here on the screen. If you are listening to this audio on it, when we do these podcasts now, we're trying to do them as live as possible on YouTube. If you are watching this back, there will be a video that you can watch this on Spotify if you're watching it there in any case. But looking at the bracket that we've got, Miami are up 3-1. Do you expect that to be a miraculous comeback for the Knicks, or do you think this is going to be the gentleman's sweep like I mentioned beforehand?
I'll be honest, I think they're going to do it in the next game. I just think Miami have shown over these games that they just are the better team. And it's interesting when you said before, is it Miami playing well? Is it the Knicks maybe not playing up to the standards we thought? And I tend to actually be a bit more positive on the Miami side and give them more of the credit than I do, discredit the Knicks. I think we've seen a couple players really stand up when the Heat need them to. And I've got to give a lot of credit to Eric Spoelstra as well. Yeah. Whenever you find teams in this sort of situation, I don't think there's a better coach in the NBA that would be able to take this team and that's not to discredit obviously Jimmy Butler and what he's been doing, but I don't think you can find a better coach in the NBA to manage this. I would say that overall, if you told the Knicks fans or just people in general that the Knicks were going to reach the playoffs, have a home seed, did they have a home seed at the end? I can't remember actually. Were they fourth or fifth?
Yeah.
have a home seed and win a
Well, in this
playoff game.
series anyway.
Yeah, and win a playoff game. I'd say they'd probably take that at the start of the season. So I think it's still, even if they do lose this game, as I think they will lose the series at the very least, there's still a lot of positives to take away.
Yeah, I would expect them to pull one out at MSG as well, just to give their fans something to shout about, put the pressure on a little bit. But I think it'll probably get sorted out in Miami pretty quickly after a point of the other guys stepping up as well. I can't find the exact stat that I was looking for, but I know in one of these games that Miami had the greatest points total in the playoffs from undrafted players. That's a pretty big thing for them. I know Duncan Robertson, that's an example. He got $90 million and we kind of make fun of him now. But when he became when he first got into the league, everyone was saying that's a fantastic pickup for an undrafted player. Gabe Vincent, other guys as well. I can't remember all the ones that are undrafted on there because there's a few of them, but that's a big sticking point for them. Spoelstra is kind of getting the best. He's getting the best out of a group of, you'd say, kind of subpar players people have judged not good enough to draft in the NBA. So that has to be given a lot of credit.
Yeah, I know that obviously if they go back, they can make it interesting. I just feel like from the comments that Julius Randle was mentioning in the post game, it just seems that all hope is almost lost for them. So if Miami are really going to go and put sort of their foot on the neck, I can imagine that happening, especially when you think that 76ers Celtics series of whoever they're going to be playing. I think that game that's going to go to 7. So I'm going to wait and see what happens from there. They're going to want that extra bit of rest. So that's how I'm seeing things happening. But who knows? We'll stay in the East and we will move over to the Sixers Celtics. We've got a couple of games to catch up for on that one in particular. We almost witnessed, would we say, the biggest bottle, if that had happened, of the current playoffs so far? Not excluding the Bucks, in terms of just in a microwaved one-game sort of bottle.
You talk about the Sixers one.
The Sixers one,
Okay.
when they were up by 16 or 18 at one stage, and they took it back to overtime, and they just about got it to overtime as well.
If you looked at it in a singular game, then yeah, that was almost horrendous. But they pulled through, and I think the story of the playoffs, well, not the playoffs, this series so far, is that James Harden is still capable of giving you those classic Houston James Harden nights, and they really needed that one when Embiid was out.
It's not even that. It's more, I think, that he's always obviously been good, and no one debates this, but his whole criticism has always been, come playoff time, we never really see the same James Harden that we would do in the regular season. Now, he hasn't been putting up 42-point games really that often this season. So to do it in a playoff situation, in such a clutch moment, that's probably James Harden's arguably his greatest playoff career moment in this series. Would you not say?
I'm gonna disagree. He brought the Warriors, the Golden State Warriors, with Kevin Durant pretty damn close. And I don't think we've never seen James Harden perform in the playoffs. It's just that he's had, I think, some pretty big notable moments where he's really choked it. But I wouldn't go as far as to say that's his best moment in the playoffs. But it's, I think the shock and surprise of it may put it up there a little bit, because you're thinking that guy's, even before when we were previewing the series, I was like, I don't think this guy has that in him anymore, really, that burst to get past someone, the consistent drawing of fouls, which I think kind of got reduced by the fact that the rules changed and everything like that. But to put up a high volume night like that, I didn't think he had it in him. I will say that he had a terrible game 2 and a terrible game 3. He came through when they needed in that game 4, and yeah, I was a bit perplexed by, because he hits the big game. Well, not the game. Yeah, the game winner. It ends up being. And I was perplexed by the Celtics' decision to just double on Joel Embiid when he was having an absolutely horrific fourth quarter, just making mistake after mistake, turnover after turnover, and they just doubled up him, leave Harden free, and he said that he shoots that shot every day. He's not some bum that you can just leave on the outside. He's an all-star talent. Top 75 of all time, probably.
Yeah.
He was in there.
Harden,
probably,
definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
He was definitely in the top 75. I'm not sure where we'd put him overall, but he can score those shots. Basically, it was a weird decision for me, and I think it sums up what I feel like has been a bit of a coaching failure for the Celtics this series. But if we want to go into the Sixers aspect a bit more, and pump them up a bit because we were pretty negative on the Knicks. That's fair because I've given Joel Embiid a lot of critiques over the last couple of years, mainly for his playoff. But I think that might be last night anyway his best moment of his career, maybe a defining moment of his career, really. So, hats off to that.
Yeah, him and Maxi had 2 big games. I will say as well. I know George was raging about this. I think we did in that game for us. I'm remembering it wrong. There was a blatant offensive foul by Jason Tatum that was not called in that game.
There's a Marcus Smart charge as well. That was a bit.
The
thing, the Marcus Smart charge though, you can argue it either way. I would lean on the side that I don't think it's I don't think it's an offensive foul. I think he's slightly moving, so therefore it's the charge that isn't the charge for it. The push off is as plain as day. Like I cannot believe that wasn't called. And it's the whole sort of bent arm thing. If it's a bent arm but pushed out, they don't seem to call it. Whereas if they straighten the arm out in the process, that's only when they do it. But yeah, I mean that was a nuts one for it. But luckily, stuff like that is the stuff that we've seen in other series of years gone by, where you get bogus calls that end up, not that would have necessarily been the game-making decision, but it did have an impact on how close that game was run. So, but no, the Joel Embiid definitely in Game 5, he turned it up. He was the one that was dominating. He was the sort of guy that we finally got. Not that he has been bad this series, but he hasn't been at the level of what, like you said, Louis, that where you'd expect to see Joel Embiid that you see
his usual standards, basically.
His usual ones, yeah. And last night and the Garden, that's when he came into it. So
I'd kind of some slack as well.
So I'm not sure if we're going. Is that you going then, Louis, or is that Lewis? He's done that a couple of times now. So
no, it's definitely me going. It's definitely me going. I was just saying I'm cutting some slack because obviously he's coming back from the injury, so he's not going to be at 100%. You still want to see him perform. You don't want to use that as an excuse, but there is that caveat to it.
Yeah, he doesn't look hurt. That's the thing. I mean, like you wouldn't have even known. But I was fearing kind of the worst for him after they go to that Game 3. Or was it Game 3 or Game 4 that they gave him the MVP trophy? I think he comes back
3. I think.
Yeah, I think it was Game 3.
Game 3.
Yeah, sorry, Game 3 because that's the one they lost. And I was fearing a bit the worst after that because you're thinking that's surely the emotional high. You've got to win that one. It's in your home court. They've obviously stolen one at the Garden before, so you're thinking make them that advantage basically, and they didn't, and that's unfortunate. But they managed to come back here, and I think this is different to what we've seen from them before because they've obviously been to the Garden a couple of occasions in playoff series. Joel Embiid has done as well, and he's looked a bit of a deer in the headlights, like that atmosphere that it can catch you up sometimes, I guess. But that team, not just him, I think Maxey, like you said, had a bit of it in him. Even Tobias Harris had a bit of a hunter's eye. He was looking like a bit of a savage out there. Like he didn't care. He's just a bit of a snarl to him. I liked it. And it looked like the Celtics, on the other hand, were kind of buckling. And, they were looking a bit like, they were the ones caught in the headlights basically, and they didn't know entirely how to respond or react. The crowd was booing. They were leaving early. It looked a
Wasn't
bit
pretty.
I know this isn't the end of the series by a long shot, but it looked a bit like how do they come back from that, if you know what I mean? And I'll probably regret saying those words, but it looked rough.
Yeah, so I mean, for me, if I know anything, and that's we're gonna end that there. If I know anything, the Sixers aren't gonna do this the easy way. I fully expect the Celtics to come back and claw this back, and it's going to go to a 7-game series. I don't think the Sixers are going to round this up at home. I've just got the feeling this is just what happens with the Sixers. You're going to see something go wrong. It's going to go to a Game 7, and then it's anyone's call, is what I'd say. But how do you boys see this one going?
Yeah, I don't think they'll win the next game. I think it'll go to 7. At that point, I think it's a real 50-50. I mean, going off what we've seen, I would tend to favour the Sixers really, and it would just be a matter of, is he keeping to go back to full health, or is there going to be another bump in the road that might cause some issues? But if it's full health, I don't know. As Louis said, it's almost like an attitude thing when I see them play. And just looking at the Philly players, they just seem like they want it more. I don't really know how to put it into words other than that. And then obviously you got, a couple incredible performances from James Harden, which really aided it along.
It's one of those I hate doing this type of thing, but it looks like the Sixers are a little bit mentally tougher, and it looks like they've got a little bit of edge over the Celtics, who really strangely, who have been to the finals, have been the long playoff runs now. You can't say Tatum and Brown are babies in this aspect. They're old. They're not old, but they're older, and
they're veterans
they've got that
in this
experience.
one. You can call them almost now.
Exactly, and I mean, if they do go out here, there will be some questions asked on whether we've got a bit of a change in format layout.
Yeah, I think my hang on one sec. My other screen sharing has just dumped. So whilst I fix that, go back to it.
I just think Tatum and Brown, there'll be some questions asked of, who is this one of these guys basically good enough to alpha us through this, like lead us through this? Because we've seen it with Tatum a few too many times now for it to be not something to care about. He's had a couple of occasions where he's kind of struggled in the playoffs, really, and struggled in these series. And he's not been bad in this series, per se. You can look at his stats, but I don't think he has really stamped his authority on any of those games, if I'm quite honest. And I'd say Jaylen Brown probably has done a little bit more. But, I think it stems a lot from the coaching. I think they're missing Ime in these types of scenarios, and I don't think Joe Mazzulla, in his first year as a head coach, has been quite up to it. If you're getting out adjusted by Doc Rivers, the man who can blow a 3-1 lead against who was the last seed in the NBA this year, probably like the Detroit Pistons. He probably could do it if you give him a chance. So yeah, that says something, I think, because Doc's had quite an impressive series, I think, so far.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing for it is that obviously the Sixers should win this game. I just know what the Sixers are like, and I fully expect. I can see I can see Harden having another good game. I can see Embiid not necessarily doing it. This is what we know, but this could be the year where we now see that sort of turn, and Embiid at home comes out and puts in like a 30-15, and then all you need is your Maxey, your Harden just to play at that level, and then they should be safe. But it's the Sixers, so it's just not going to happen that way. It just isn't.
I'd get that crowd, get PJ Tucker out there ringing the bell. He's been really good this series, actually. But so we're all I shouldn't say this, but I kind of expect the Sixers to go through at this stage, and that really surprises me.
At this stage, it's not. This isn't at this stage.
Yeah, no.
If you're 3-2 up and you have home court as the next game, you should win this series. This is how it should go. It's just we've seen the Sixers for multiple years, and it never ever goes accordingly. So, but I think the game's not tonight. It's tomorrow. It's Lakers Warriors and all that tonight, isn't it? I think it's tomorrow night. So it's 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. So it's going to be 12:30 Eastern time out. 12:30 UK time. So a little bit of a rough one for us over here on the other side of the pond. But bottom line, then, do you think the Sixers are going to go through, Louis?
Yeah, I think so.
Like if you had to put your money where your mouth is, you'll think the Sixers. Yeah,
I think the Celtics look a bit rattled. I think I would put them through. But like you said, I don't expect this to be the easy way over, and I'm expecting the Game 7. And it's hard, but the Celtics aren't good at home. Like in the playoffs, if you look at their records over they got absolutely battered by the Warriors at home as well. But if you look at it, they've not got a great home record. So I'm not saying like that home court advantage is that important. So yeah, I'm expecting the Sixers win here.
Just before we jump to you, Lewis, Marcus Smart apparently is the NBA equal of Thomas Suchek. Not sure where he's heard that one from, but in any case, Lewis, where are you saying with the Sixers v Celtics?
As I said before, if you're gun to my head right now, who you're choosing, I'd pick the Sixers, but I do think it will go to 7. You'd hope if you're a Sixers fan that they'd get it done in their own building, but as you say, it does always seem the hardest road. So I'll go with the Sixers and 7 as opposed to winning it next.
So
Sixers heat.
But do we hang on? So do we genuinely think then that the Sixers will lose at home and then beat Boston in the Garden?
I basically think they're going to win one of 2, pretty much.
Yes,
that's simply the way I'm looking at it.
No, I think they're going to win the next game.
You think you're going to win it?
But I can see it being one of those ones like we had the other night where they're like, oh, well, I'll just throw it to Marcus Smart under the basket for some reason, something like that. That's the part where I agree with you. They do have a tendency to just shoot themselves in the foot.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Sixers Heat series is. If anyone predicted that, I'd have been shocked
Yeah.
at the start of the year. Like, I want to see your NBA bracket that
Nowhere near.
shows nowhere near. No one's picking that as a series. And there's so many sort of player arcs and stories and little nuances that come with that series. The ultimate one being, of course, Jimmy Butler v the Sixers.
Yeah.
It's just going to be the stuff on Twitter for that game for that series is going to be nuts. But who knows? We might not get it. We might get a Knicks v Celtics, and that could be a completely. There's the other rivalry that we've got there. The Knicks v the Celtics. That could have been it as well. So, but in any case, we'll switch it over to the West. We will go for Nuggets Suns now. Did you see this transpiring like it is? I think I would say that after the first two games, we were like, the Suns are in massive trouble. So for them to come back and bring this to 2-2, even though Denver won it last time, there we go. That's what we've got for it. I'm sorry, I had a bit of background noise. I think that was a bit of a catastrophe going on somewhere else. But we've got the Nuggets and the Suns here. Louis, how are you feeling for the rest of the series? Do you think Denver are going to 4-2 this out now?
I was surprised by the Suns comeback. I must admit, I was feeling pretty boisterous. I think we recorded after game one, and it kind of played out how I expected, with the lack of other players from the Suns really affecting the game. Game two was a little bit closer, but still kind of came out with that. And then you got games 3 and 4, and I think there's different stories in both. I do think KD and Book were always going to get them 1 or 2 games, which is kind of what happened. They combined for like a 70 or something on both of them. Booker, surprisingly, been the more impressive of the two. I will say, I think there has been, I can't remember the stat of his field goal percentage over this series, but it is something ridiculous. It's I think like 32 over 37 or something. It's just crazy.
I think before the last game, I think he was averaging 41 on like 80% true shooting percentage. It was incredible.
Yeah. So I always thought those were going to get them 1 or 2 games. I think what surprised me a bit more in that game 4 is that the Suns' other players, their bench, kind of outscored. Well, they outscored the Nuggets, and they came through a little bit more, which is not what I expected, because I thought all those players were pretty poor. But you got in Landry Shamet, who we have lambasted on a couple of occasions, coming through with a big game. Go for, we'll give it to him. But I think you saw what Jokic was saying. I think in that game 4, where he had a bit of an eventful one, he was pushing the Suns' new owner, who dutifully took an absolute dive from his push, which I thought was quite funny. But it was on the sideline, just saying they've just got 2. They've just got 2 players, and that kind of is true, especially with Chris Paul out and campaign minutes really heaving and struggling a little bit there. But I just don't think the Suns will be able to beat them away from home. So even if they do win the next game, it goes back to Denver. I can't see the Suns winning it. I just can't. They're not going to beat them at home. So I think they'll want to try and get this ironed out, obviously away from home, because I think that'll be a mental benefit for them as well, that they can go to someone else's arena and snatch their soul from them. But Jokic has just been incredible. Defensively, he's not really been exploited as much as I thought he would be. And I think I don't really think they're making much adjustments to the Suns. I think the game plan's fine, because I just don't think anyone else apart from KD and Book is going to win them the series, basically. So I'm feeling pretty calm on this. I don't think my position has changed too much despite the games.
I think the issue with how I see this is that Jamal Murray has been, I would say, a little bit below what I was expecting of him, but Jokic has been above it, so he's made up for that sort of one. I would have expected also a bit more from Michael Porter Jr. and maybe a little bit more from Aaron Gordon, but I'm not going to sit there and be like, I was expecting 20-point games from them every night. That's not the players that they are on this team. The thing with it is that with the Suns, and obviously this is well documented, it's just been KD and Booker, and they've been, and KD to a lesser extent than Booker, but they've both been phenomenal. You're expecting a bit more from Ayton and then just a little bit more from everyone else to chip in. The only guy that has gone off has been Shamet on that night where he caught some heat whilst he started shooting from deep. So the issue with that team right now, and even with CP3 off the floor, they seem to be a little bit of a quicker team anyway. They seem to sort of catch Denver out in different areas when they're playing. So
Yeah.
I think for going forward, again, we've said this prior to when we did our predictions. I don't think anyone would have. No one's going to sit here and go Phoenix have been a complete flop considering how they've lost.
Definitely
They've
not.
shown that they've got pieces there, but they're going to need some time to build around Booker and KD. And when CP3 goes, then you can really restructure it. And I don't think DeAndre Ayton will be here next season, I should say. But
Who are you going
who
to
knows
trade
as
him
well.
to?
Well, this is the thing that comes of it. If they've got KD and Book, this is your time to win. It doesn't work with Ayton clearly, so you have to sort of move him on and try and get something a bit more beneficial.
I mean, yeah, I think no one's surprised in the manner in which both these teams have won their games. The blueprint was panned out prior to the series, especially on the Sun side of things, where for them to win the games, KD and Book just have to go nuclear, and then you have to just hope that some other players make the shots when like Book or KD have been doubled. And I think in the game 4, that when they had open shots, I think the rest of the Suns were 10 of 12, and then other games they've just been shooting really poorly. So that is something that we thought before the series. They don't have much of a bench. You're not going to be able to trust it consistently. But I also think when we said that they were going nuclear, I don't think we thought how nuclear Devin Booker was actually going to go. Like when Jokic is getting 51 or 53 points and 11 assists for the loss because Devin Booker is just shooting the entire Nuggets team out the gym, and KD is also, he's not been as efficient as he usually is, barring one of the games, but he is still, getting enough production to push them over the line in those 2 games that they won. The problem is how consistently can you do that over a 7-game series? And as Louis said, more importantly, in the away games at that high altitude in Denver, you saw Booker have his first low efficiency night last night, and the Nuggets really blew him out, especially in that third quarter where Jokic he scored 17 points and just took the game over. How consistent can you get to carry on what you did in the 2 home games in these last 2 games? Because that's what they're going to need. They're going to need minimum like 35 each from Durant and Booker, and they are fully capable of doing it. Don't get me wrong; they're 2 of the 3 best players in this series. But it's just, would you bet on it? And you would bet against it purely just because we haven't seen that level of production from 2 players in the 7-game series really hardly ever.
Yeah, I will say as well. When they're going nuclear, they're taking this is just the style of both of these guys. They take a lot of mid-range shots. So them going nuclear and having an efficient night, it's just like not generating enough to match what the Nuggets are doing, and they're bombarding them from the 3-point range with everyone they have. Basically, the mid-range cannot just keep up. Like, this is kind of like as basketball has developed, but the mid-range can't keep up with these 3-point bombs. And I think the Nuggets are doing a good job in terms of defending that a little bit, because they don't have anyone to get at Jokic. To get at the Nuggets, really, you have to get at Jokic defensively, and they've got no one that's stretching Jokic out because Ayton can't shoot. So it's just made it a little bit easier for the Nuggets to defend or hide the defensive deficiencies, which, I mean, if they go through to the next series, it's probably going to be something a little bit similar, but the Lakers have more players, so that I'm jumping to conclusions there. But it's an interesting one to think about, because I haven't really seen their defensive deficiencies, which I saw really in the last series against the Timberwolves. They've managed to hide them a little bit against the Suns.
Yeah,
so,
I think the other thing with the Lakers
on,
as well, sorry, just to say, is I know a lot of people have said before about the matchup in the playoffs that they had where the Lakers came out on top. And while AD is definitely one of the worst matchups for Jokic you could probably find in the league, they don't have, even though they've got a lot of players, they don't have the big bodies that they did have before with this current Lakers roster to maybe give AD a bit more of a rest. Like they had JaVale McGee, I think Dwight Howard was there. Yeah, he was there at the time. Yeah, so they could throw them at him, whereas this time it's going to be if the Lakers and the Nuggets get through, because I don't think it's a foregone conclusion for either.
No.
It's going to be a lot more on AD to be performing consistently defensively, which I think this playoffs he has shown he can do. Offensively, he's gone quite hot and cold, but defensively, he's been the stalwart for the Lakers.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately then, and we sort of have kind of gone from this, who do you think's going through? Do you think there's going to be a Suns remontada, or is this just the Nuggets are getting it done in 6?
I think the Suns will win the next game. I think you'll see a bit of a bounce back, and it's going to have to be more of the same from Kevin Durant and Devin Booker when they've been at home. But just think, Game 7 in Denver, the high altitude, the fact that Denver have been pushing the pace at the start of quite a lot of the quarters in the first and the third of the last game. Every time the Suns miss a shot, it's just getting thrown straight back at them, and they're flying down the court. And it's
even Jokic got a couple, didn't he?
Yeah, well, a lot of discussion has been about that Jokic is outrunning Ayton up and down the court a few times, and that just can't happen because literally 50% of the entire population of the world should be able to outrun Jokic. So Ayton should be able to do it himself.
290 pounds there.
Yeah, exactly. That is one thing I saw. I saw a podcast where Kat was talking about with PG about Jokic and not realizing how big he actually is and how long his arms are. And I don't think we appreciate how much of a problem that is to deal with, especially in the post, because he's so smart as well. He can just bait you into contact and kind of push and move around just where he wants and have his way with someone like a DeAndre Ayton that he might not with, like obviously an Embiid or an AD.
And he can also pass to wherever he wants in the court, which is another.
It's just an offensive problem, and that as well we haven't mentioned yet. I think one problem we talked about, Suns trying to exploit Jokic's defense. I think the one thing the Nuggets have done that showed up in the third quarter of the last game that the Suns can't deal with is just the 2-man game between Murray and Jokic. They've just got no answer for it. And it's because, you look at the two of them, they can score at all levels. Obviously, Jokic can't go get his own shot on the 3-point line, but if he's open, he's shooting like 45, 47%, so he will hit them if you leave him. And Murray, even though he had 2 points at the half, when they started running that two-man game in the third quarter, just kept on piling on the points. And I don't think the Suns have a response to it at the moment.
No. Okay, so we'll move from that one over onto the other side then. Warriors-Lakers is what we've got here now. This one I feel was probably the closest. I would say people could swing it either way. Argument with the Sixers Celtics, I'd say as well. But this is the one where I feel people really had divided opinions on. We've seen now the games in which where AD has been effective. He's the guy that the Warriors don't really have that answer for. Kevon Looney can do all he wants. He isn't Anthony Davis's maker. He's not going to do it. Are you surprised at what you've seen, or is this how you thought it would go? Let me happen. I'll go to you first.
I mean, I did pick the Lakers when we were doing this last week. Just on the point of Anthony Davis going hot and cold, I saw the acronym of alternate days, which I found quite his AD's alternate days, which is kind of accurate. I don't want to go too ham on it, but he hasn't really needed to go for that. I mean, defensively, I agree, he's been probably the best player in the league, the best player in the postseason for that at all levels. And I mean, you just watch that last game where he's blocking Steph Curry out by the 3-point line and just playing great defense on him. He is the best defensive player in the league when obviously his health and everything is correct and he can get up and down the court a little bit more and he's not got unnecessary amounts of muscle on him because he wants to play the 5 or whatever. When he's looking lean, when he's looking pretty quick on that perimeter, there's just no one better. So I'll give him that. But I don't even know if the story really has even been about LeBron and AD. I mean, obviously it has been because they're the best 2 players on the team. But every night, it would annoy me so much if I'm rooting against the Lakers, which I kind of am because I don't like them that much. But it's just like these random players that just go off. It could be D'Angelo one night, which was a bit of a revenge game, I guess, for him. It was Lonnie Walker, obviously, in the fourth quarter, end of last game, 15 points. Rui Hachimura, obviously, absolutely torched the Memphis Grizzlies. We haven't really had Dennis Schroeder come out with a game like that yet. Austin Reeves had a good one against the Memphis Grizzlies. So they've just got players, like I said, when we talked about it last week, they've got they're growing list of players that I feel like you can trust in these situations. and the coach isn't afraid to like take a player out or throw a player in. You know, if they had a good game last week, it doesn't matter if you're not having a good game, you're out and this guy's in.
Yeah.
And I think that's really their benefit, and that I think they needed that because AD and LeBron maintaining their health and maintaining their freshness is probably their biggest challenge they have going forward. So I've got to give props to obviously Plinker and everyone there because that has been their superpower. And on the opposing side, the Warriors it's dwindling every day, and their offense is really stuttering now. And it just feels like if Steph's not going to do something, that gap between the best player on that team was obviously Steph, and then the second player is just getting wider and wider. Like Clay is just not coming with it. Andrew Wiggins, not really. You're not expecting these guys to really get their own shots at this stage of Draymond. Jordan Poole is just a mess at the moment, and it doesn't look like it's something that's going to be recovered in this series, if at all, with Golden State, because that's the situation it's looking like right now. He looks really quite bedraggled, shall we say. So I'm expecting the Lakers to close this one out, if I'm quite honest, in the next game. That's just my opinion, but I think they just look by far the better overall team.
Yeah, I think also you talked about the different players on the Lakers being able to step up. I think that's a testament not only to, obviously, as you said, Rob Pelinka for the moves he made, but also to LeBron James, because when you have a player of his stature, it's still very strange to see, deferring to your Austin Reeves or some of the other players to carry the ball or, generate some offense or hit some big shots. And a guy with the accolades he has, the stature he has, having confidence in you, it's infectious to the rest of the team and will help push them up to the level we've seen them being able to reach. And then, as you say, even though AD has been hot and cold on offense still, and I know there's I can't remember which way around it is, but it's like odd numbers in the playoffs. He has a fantastic offensive night, even numbers in the playoffs. He slows down. But on the defensive end, every game he's just been the best defensive player in the playoffs, and he is the best defensive player in the league when healthy, as you say. And it's incredible when you see him. Obviously he's not going to be one-on-one guarding Steph all the time, but there's possessions where he has to pick him up, and even though because he's such a big guy, you don't expect him to be able to do it. He can keep up enough so where he can stop him going past him and getting to the rim or contest any of the pull-up shots, and that's just so important for that Lakers team. Him being that defensive stalwart he is, because I think even though we talk about big people making shots or big shots being made by people, it's defense that is going to win the Lakers series.
Yeah.
I mean, look, the thing with it though is that this entire game they won by that. They won by Lonnie Walker coming up big in the fourth quarter. They won the game by 3 points, but you see it in the manner of that Clay and Steph shot 6 of 23 combined. So it was just a bad night for the Warriors and some, you can argue, fluky players coming up big for the Lakers. I do expect Golden State to pull this back. There's no way they're going to get gentlemen swept. I don't think that the Warriors will allow that. I didn't
actually say. I just quickly before we carry on, I actually do agree with Louis. I think the Lakers are going to close it out.
You think they're going to close it? I don't see a way in which the Warriors are going to lay down and go out in 5.
I mean, they're not going to lay down, but
I just can't see it happening in terms of the way in which, especially that game was lost, and how angry some of the guys seem to have been from it. I'm not going to say that Andrew Wiggins has had a bad series, but he's not been at the level, and obviously is not going to come back at the level after missing how much time he did out. Jordan Poole, again, I think it's at this point, it's almost like the mental block now. I feel like he's just
100%.
You don't lose it. No one's debating that he's not at the levels of a Clay and Steph, but he's nowhere near as bad as he's been performing in this series. And then also just Wiggins has not been there, and there's a few other things for it. But I don't see it going down in the manner of that the Lakers will push it out in 5. I think it at least goes to 6. But if it gets to 6, I can't put out the Warriors. I just can't. I don't know what it is for it. It's just how I see this team and what I've seen of them in years.
Yeah, it's true. It's just I think the issues I think I've seen enough of the Lakers at this point where I wouldn't call those role players having those big games fluky anymore. It's actually become reliable to the point where you can count on an Austin Reeves or a Dennis Schroeder or a Rui Hachimura to get you some, guaranteed points. And it's just when I look at the other side as well, I don't think Jordan Poole, these last few games have been an aberration. The last 3 games, he's just been terrible to the point where he played 10 minutes in the last game. He was borderline unplayable. And, 3 games in a row, if it's someone like Clay, who's had a poor couple shooting nights, but the 2 before, he was just catching fire. Yeah, Clay, I've got every faith that he can just turn it around. But because with Jordan Poole, I think it's more, as you say, of a mental block and of a culmination of everything that's happened over the season. I just don't think it's something he can immediately flip the switch and then for the last 3 games be able to give them great production to the point where, along with Steph and Clay, they can push it over the line. That doesn't mean that they can't. It could happen in a couple of the next games, or maybe one, and it goes to 6 or 7. It's just, in my opinion, I just think the Lakers will get it done in this one.
I think the Lakers are going to end up winning this series now. I just think the Warriors have got one more in them. I don't think they'll go and get gentlemen's swept.
On the Warriors aura sort of thing, I just don't think this is that the chemistry seems off with this team. Obviously, I think it probably stems from John Paul getting absolutely smacked in the face before the season started. Yeah. But I mean, I'm not going to say that's caused his pretty, say, below par season, but he was below par this season, and he's had 3 bad games here that kind of just amplifies things a little bit. But I just don't think this team looks right and firing on all cylinders. As you mentioned, Wiggins missed quite a lot of time. I wouldn't mind seeing more Moody minutes. I wouldn't mind seeing more Kuminga, but just throw some other guys out there. I know Kerr doesn't like to mess with his rotations very much because he has this, it's a system really. It's not like, plug and play. And if the players don't get it right, he'll yank them. But I just feel like they just need some other options here because it seems like the offense is just not quite working. And you can say about it took a Lonnie Walker gamer to beat them, but I think that could be, like Lewis says, that can be anyone. That could be any one of their random role players you throw out. That could be Malik Beasley, didn't even play last game. Lonnie Walker didn't probably play last game. It doesn't matter. So I just think offensively they need some more options here because it looks like it's Steph or bust at the moment.
Yeah, and I will say there was a couple changes. Like you saw Gary Payton get put into the starting lineup in the last game. So there's definitely there's definitely tools that Steve Kerr has to change things. And you saw, I mean, for example, just look at another series when Chris Paul went out, Monty Williams was forced to trust his bench more. And they repaid him in that game 4 by putting up some serious bench points to get him over the line. So you can't say, as George said, you can't say it's done and dusted because of who the Warriors are. But I think it just comes to a point where you look at just what you've seen over the past few games and maybe in the playoffs so far, and just based on that, go with the outcome you think is most likely. And for me, that's the Lakers closing out at home.
Yeah, just a quick one here. Adam says, when the playoffs are over, will you be reviewing your pick'ems on the pod? Yes, we will. We'll go through everything and we'll do a deep dive on what we went for it. And
just as a quick aside, this isn't really about the series, but did you see Gary Payton having to hold in his chunder when the game started?
No,
have you seen that one?
No.
I implore you to look it up. It's quite, it's quite interesting. I don't know why he's I mean, he plays, he starts the game and everything. So I'm quite confused as to why he was so. Yeah.
I would say as well, have you seen to give some hope to Warriors fans? Not that you need
the dog
to be given some hope because you can trust the team, but yeah, the dog that predicted a 3-1 Lakers lead and then for them to bottle it and lose 4-3. So you got that going.
The issue is
a good record.
Yeah, no, he does it as well. I don't know. In terms of it, so if we go from it here, there was 2 things I was going to mention. One, did you see, Draymond's been doing his podcast that he does after every game. And he mentions in this game, he was going through he didn't play well. Steph put up his shots. Clay was missing some shots, but he played well. He mentioned everyone on the team didn't say anything about Jordan Poole, which was an interesting one. And I don't think that that's a deliberate thing, but I also think that then speaks a bit more to it than anything. I don't think he's blanked Jordan Pool's name out there to like be a dick or anything. I think he's just forgotten about it.
Yeah.
The other one that's been going around, he played 10 minutes.
There's not much to say about 10 minutes.
No, he had a bad game, and everything that was in the tension with the locker rooms afterwards, with like him and the reporters, was everything that from it. The other thing that I've seen that's been going about on Twitter for the past sort of couple of hours from the herd, I don't know if it's they've said that they think this trade should happen or that there are actually rumors about this happening. But there are things going around that there's a trade between the Warriors and the Celtics, in which the Warriors get Jaylen Brown and Malcolm Brogdon, and the Celtics get Jordan Poole and Andrew Wiggins and picks. And I just don't see that happening in any way, shape, or form. On what on earth the
terrible trade.
The Celtics wouldn't take it. But yeah, it was something that I saw come about from it. From obviously, but you can understand it, but off the way of which Brown and Brogdon have played, and then off of which Jordan Poole and Wiggins have played. Maybe if you'd have done this trade last year, it could have had a bit of legs to it, but not.
I will say it is an interesting point to think of, though, when you think what the Warriors are going to do in the future if, say, they lose to the Lakers in this playoffs. You know, Draymond, we expect, is probably gone. But what do you do with the Jordan Poole situation? Is it, once Draymond's gone, everything's sunshine and rainbows, or are you going to have to probably trade him away? In which case, what are you going to get back for him, considering the huge contract that you gave him, and what other teams, how much do they value him?
I don't think it's not like it's a Ben Simmons bad money contract. It's not the end of the world in terms of the play you get for the money he is. Yeah, granted, he's not had a great series here, and his season compared to the prior hasn't been as great. I'm still not completely down and out on Jordan Poole being sort of. This isn't in the realm of if you trade him away, what on earth could you possibly get? They'd still get something back for him.
What could you get?
It'd be trading them at his lowest possible value, I would say.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah,
but they're not afraid to do that. He did that with James Wiseman. Like they will just cut their losses.
But this is kind of. I think in their head they probably thought, because I think it's Clay player option, Draymond player option this summer. Apologies if I'm wrong. I think they should be trying to keep Draymond, because I don't think they'd be able to stop anyone if they don't have Draymond. So we'll see what happens with that. Maybe he fancies pastures new. I don't really like the Lakers fit for him, but we can discuss a more in-depth post-mortem at another stage, but I think they probably thought Jordan Poole would be like the next Clay. Not exactly the same type of player, because he's more high usage, obviously, but that guy alongside Steph who can bomb out from the backcourt and take the offensive load a little bit. So I mean, I don't see them trading in this summer, because, as I said, low value. Just see how it goes in a different type of situation, but I don't think it's a great contract, if I'm quite honest. I think it looks a bit
it's not a great contract, but it's not like the way in which I know how NBA Twitter works and how everything comes from it. If they get bounced in the next round and everyone's going to be like, what a terrible it's not like Ben Simmons level. It just isn't. Like,
I think not when it was signed, but I think I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago. I said I don't think that's a great contract, looking at it in terms of it.
Yeah.
So, it's a lot. They're paying out a lot of money, basically. I don't know how they're going to do it, especially with new CBA.
Louis, luckily, I think in the off-season, we're going to go through quite a lot of teams and say what they should be doing in the off-season.
It'll be nice. It'll be fun.
So that's something that we can explore in those ones when we take a deep dive on sort of the Lakers or the Warriors or whoever it is, and we address and assess what we would do and change in their roster. I know like you mentioned before, Draymond, I feel, is absolutely gagging to play with LeBron James. So if he gets the opportunity, I feel he might jump for it that way, but who knows from it. But in any case, so you two both think, I mean, I also agree. I do think the Lakers are going to go through now. So it looks like we'll be getting a Lakers Nuggets conference finals and then a Miami Heat. And I would give I would say a 60% chance on the Sixers. Should be more, but it's because of what the Sixers are like. And also how good the Celtics are. If we're getting this as a series, if we're getting this now, and this is where we'll sort of start to run this one down. You've got a Nuggets-Lakers comp finals, and you've got a Miami Heat and 76ers finals. Lewis Howard, tell me who you think is going to go through in those conference finals to the NBA. I don't want an NBA finals prediction out of you. I just want who you feel is going to get to the NBA finals.
Well, I'll tell you what, the hilarious thing is I'm pretty sure when we were doing our pick'ems at the start and choosing our bracket rounds, I said something along the lines of the storyline throughout the regular season has been Jokic and Embiid, but I don't think the playoffs is going to play out that way and it's going to be different. Well, if these are the matchups, then it very much could be a replay of the regular season
that'd
where
be
it's
crazy.
Jokic and Embiid in the finals. And you know what? If there's some great storylines right here, because if you pick the Sixers and the Nuggets, you've got the Jokic and Embiid. You know, FPL Twitter will be on fire every single time they play because people they will die for their team and for Jokic and Embiid. And then on the other side, you've got the bubble rematch where every time the Heat or the Lakers win a game, everything I see on my timeline is, see, the bubble matchup wasn't a fluke. These are great teams. It's like, we're a few years removed from that. But I mean, if that's what you want to run with, go for it. We could have a rematch of that. We could have 76ers Nuggets or any other combination, which wouldn't be as good.
What is your prediction? What are you seeing? Are you seeing
if they were the teams to get through, then I'll say we'll carry on the narrative from the regular season. Jokic versus Embiid in the finals. See who can come out on top on the Nuggets and the 76ers.
Yeah,
Luigi,
I've got a really funny feeling that the Lakers are going to make the finals, but I'm not going to pick them because I've picked the Nuggets throughout. But I just have a feeling that could happen. It's just the Lakers, isn't it? They've always got it, and LeBron's always got it. And
I mean, if they go from being, I think it was 2-10 to start the season off, to being in the finals, that is genuinely unbelievable.
Yeah, another chip to LeBron's legacy. I think at this stage, some people have kind of gone like, it doesn't really matter if he gets another. I think it would do, personally. I think every definitely like that would matter.
Yeah, considering how you'd have seen like a year ago, you'd have had people, and I know that it's not a great thing to use as an example, but you see on places like First Take, if the Lakers should trade LeBron away and move away from it, and I know they've done all the trades, but if they do end up winning a championship this year, it is one of the greatest sort of arc stories that you have of a team rebuilding to then go on and win a championship.
And people are so fickle with these things. Like when the Warriors started winning games in the series against the Lakers, there was things, you talk about First Take, I think it was like Stephen A saying, I might have to take LeBron off my Mount Rushmore and put Steph on it if the Warriors win this series. And look, you can do what you want with those kind of things. I don't care. It's your opinion. But it's just how a playoff series in the semi-finals determines that kind of thing. It's just, I think people are just very reactionary. I will say I am of the opinion that if LeBron was to win another championship in LA this year, it wouldn't change anything for me. I'd still, I think he's the second best basketball player of all time and he'd stay there whether he won that or not. But, once again, I go back to the wonderful world of NBA Twitter. And can you imagine both sides if they won? Imagine they won and AD got Finals MVP. You'd just see you'd see the LeBron side of it, and then people that are hating on LeBron would be like, goes against him. Another teammate of his won Finals.
No way,
MVP,
Ultimate Days is winning the Finals MVP.
Yeah, can you imagine though? It'd be like Michael. This never happened to Michael Jordan has. So LeBron.
Michael Jordan never won a championship at 37. Though.
Yeah, exactly.
This whole argument right now is NBA Twitter. What we're hearing.
Yeah,
Michael Jordan never won it at 37. Yeah,
I can see the narratives already happening. It's just
it would come.
Whenever stuff like that happens, it's always a great place to be.
The thing that is the most mental thing for me, not like disregard, not going off of this, the fact we could have an NBA Finals, and I genuinely would love to know or see if there's a way of which you can find this out, where the NBA Finals consist of effectively the 8th seed and the 7th seed. Like, I can't remember a finals where you've got that quality, which is nuts of a thing that could come. And that's not out of the realm of possibility here, because the Miami Heat very much could beat the Sixers, like if they get through.
Oh yeah.
So that isn't like a 50-1 long shot. That is a genuine thing that could happen. The 7th plays the 8th in the finals.
Both of these matchups will be close, I think, definitely.
I would say I'd expect the Sixers to win more so than the Nuggets. I think the Nuggets-Lakers one would really be up in the air.
Yeah. But it's more of that I wouldn't be like aghast if that happened. I wouldn't be like, oh my God, I cannot believe Miami have beat the Sixers considering what they've done. I mean, they might be the Celtics because this is the Sixers that we're talking about here in any case. But
one thing,
if that comes from it, go on.
I was just going to say this is before we end, so you start again. I was just going to add a little bit of AOB afterwards.
If this comes from it, there will never be a better advert for Adam Silver's playing tournament that ever comes from it, from what the Miami Heat have done. And that will be the
Lakers, technically.
Yeah, at the minute, Adam Silver's won because he's either getting the Heat in the finals and the playing tournament is the biggest success that has ever come across in anything, or he's getting Nuggets v Sixers, and the NBA marketing budget is about to triple because they're going to blow it all up for Jokic and Embiid, essentially. But go on, Louis. What was your AOB?
My AOB was just that we have the NBA draft lottery on the 16th of May. Okay. So by this time when we record next week, we'll know who has Wembanyama.
Yeah.
Which will be, whoever gets that, fair enough.
Yeah, I can't wait for the title of the next podcast, How the Spurs Rigged the Draft.
that could be it. I think they're all the same. I think the top 4 teams have all got the same odds, but I mean, everyone is being like, the Spurs have probably got
cold balls.
The Spurs have got some, the Spurs have got a little bit more coming to it than not. Let me just pull this through before we go through it. I did mention some people on Twitter wanted me to quickly run through this. I'll show you how bad my SoRare teams have been. That is Jordan Poole getting me big 3 points. So thanks for that, Jordan. It's not the way in which the playoffs have been happening on this. It's been quite hard to score points in any case. And one more quick plug. If you haven't joined the Swingman SoRare Society League, you can. There will be a link for this in the description if you're watching this on the audio on Spotify. If you're watching on YouTube, there's 237 of you in there. And this week's prize, whoever wins limited contender, picks up a Kevin Love. And at the moment, it's Gardy Dog. Would you pronounce it as that? Or Garday Dog? Was that how you say that? I'd say?
Yeah, I can't see it.
Let me zoom in. Gardy Dog.
Guard Dog, I'd say. Guard Dog. It's like a
guard
threatening
dog.
name.
Yeah, I mean, he basically won this because he had a Steph and then he had a Caleb Martin and a Gabe Vincent. But yeah, if he holds that on, I don't know how many more games are left, then he wins a big fat Kevin Love that I bought. So yeah, you'll love that one for you, mate. But yeah, there'll be a link to join that league in the description. It's free to do in any case. So like we've said before, we have that as our current schedule. We are saying Nuggets Lakers and we are saying Heat v Sixers. We'll see what happens from it. And when we come back, it will be a bit, we'll know more. We'll see what's happened. We can talk potentially about how the Sixers have done a huge choke job and everything that's come from it. So I'll look forward to that. Have you two got anything else that you want to talk about before we wrap this up?
No.
Not from me.
Nope. No. Right then. So for Louis Halpin, for Lewis Howard, and for myself, Jordan Ledger, thank you very much for listening, and we'll catch you in the next one. If you're watching us anywhere across YouTube or audio, please hit the sub button and the follow button, and a review on audio wouldn't go amiss. Thank you for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.